Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I had some content planned for today, but some unexpected scheduling changes yesterday threw a loop in that particular schedule. So instead of just having nothing, I thought I would just draw a tile. I've got a hankering to sit down and draw a Zentangle tile, and I thought I'd have you join along with me. If you'd like, you can draw along, or you can just watch. But we're going to be working with Tripoli and Springkle. These are two tangles by the Zentangle headquarters, and I'm just going to incorporate these in an unplanned tile here. So, as you can see, what I'm doing is I start with a little triangle, and then I use one edge of that triangle as a guide and create an aura line for the next, or the placement of that next triangle. That way it just keeps those sizes relatively consistent. Of course, they won't be perfect, but you can do that however you'd like. And I'm just going to be spinning the tile here a bit as I orient it for easier drawing. But you can see that I just repeat this process, creating the aura, and I go out to about the center of that line and do like that, and this creates these little triangles of some consistency that way. Now there I created a little bit of a wonky one due to my angle, and that's going to throw that overall, or that secondary pattern, out of whack, but that's okay. With Zentangle, there are no mistakes, and we just keep rolling along and see what's going to come of our overall design. And as usual, there's no right or wrong to how you assemble these pieces, and I don't really have a preconceived plan of where things are going to go here. Okay, I think that's probably enough of our Tripolis. So now I'm going to add some designs to the insides of these, just for fun. Now, this tile, or this tangle rather, that's it. That's the tangle. But it creates what we can refer to in Zentangle as reticula, or little open areas that we can fill with a fragment, which is another term specific. Now, I won't delve into the details here of reticula and fragments. That's something for another video. But that is the general idea that I'm going to employ here. I've got these patterns that have been created, these open areas that have been bounded by my Tripoli tangle, and I'm going to add some little fragments or little designs within these. And I'm going to use one simply called well, but not all fragments have names. Sometimes they're just referred to as by a number. If you have a grid, there's a nice reference. I might pop up a image of that in the original Zentangle primer, or primer, depending on your preferred pronunciation. But there are different types of fragments that can be used for different shaped reticula. And they don't always have a name, is what my point was. But what I'm doing here is I'm creating a dot in the center of this little triangular area. And then from there, I'm drawing a curved line to the corner. And the direction of that curved line, I could curve it this way or that way, it doesn't matter, but I'm doing it in, like if it's the number 9, if you can think of it that way. At least doing that consistently will create a similar meta pattern throughout these little triangles as I fill them in here. And I don't have to do them all. I'm going to do, as you see here, these that formed almost this little hexagon, I guess that would be, then I'm going to create these little fragments within just those. There's no reason, no rule about that. That's just what I'm going to do as I off the cuff do this drawing today. That are like little spikes, I'm going to do a slightly different. I'm going to also create a dot in the center, but instead of doing curved lines, I'm going to do straight lines. And then I'm going to add some additional little straight lines or hash marks to one side of that to give it the impression of a shade or a shadow. All right, so now we've got Tripoli and some fragments inside of those reticula we created. Now what I'd like to do is add some of the sprinkle shapes that I mentioned at the beginning. They are more curved and rounded and gentle. They're completely different than these direct, pointed, jagged shapes here, so I wanted something that would contrast with that. And I'm going to create a few of them as though they're growing out of some of these natural spaces between the Tripoli. So we'll start with one right here. And I'm going to draw right up like this. We create a very common little line that you see a lot in Zentangle, where we've got a nice curved line with a little dot there at the end. But then we're going to draw from that a parallel aura line all the way back. And then from there, right about where you would think this line would come through, we're going to create a little cap. And we'll just keep doing that, making it a little smaller as we go. And I'm running right off the page there, so that's as far as that one goes. Now let's just go to our next spot. I'm not going to do one necessarily in every spot, but let's see what we come up with. So I'm going to draw one here. It's like that. And the actual design has a little tail at the end there. We just didn't have room for it on this other one. Let's do one here. Actually, let's bring it right from here. That one's going right off the page as well. Let's see if we can't get a couple of these to stay on the page. In fact, let's add one here that will go up behind this, give us a little depth in our drawing with some over and under. I think that's about good for those. Don't want to overwhelm the drawing. And now it's time to add some graphite. Now with these little shapes in here, I'm going to just add graphite along the curve on the inside, so to speak, and then when we shade it, it'll hopefully give that a more interesting appearance. At least that's the goal. Okay, so we've got all those. I think on these, I like this line here to make that a shadow, so I'm going to add just a tiny bit of graphite, excuse me, on an opposite or additional side to create almost like a 3D look to this. One side will have those darker lines, another side with a very subtle amount of graphite will hopefully help blend that in. So let's see what these all look like. We'll start with those. I'm just kind of filling that in. Now on these, let's see how this comes out with just a little bit of blending in those areas. We create a over and under kind of appearance, almost like a little fan. Or little ribbons that are tucked in to each other, folded and tucked in. Guess it depends what your mind perceives when you look at these little shapes. So there our Tripoli and the fragments have been shaded. So now what do we do with our sprinkles? Well, there's several ways we can create shadows underneath and so on, or maybe both doing that and the other, but I'm going to shade one side . Well, here we have the final tile from today's session, and you can see that I've added some white highlight details using the General's Chalk or charcoal white pencil. And unfortunately, the video that I had for that was not usable, so I couldn't show you that part of it, but it's a pretty self-evident thing that I did. I just added some white areas on this gray tile to help with the highlighting and just make those shapes more fun to look at. So thank you again, everyone, for tuning in today. I hope that you enjoyed drawing with me if you did, and if nothing else, that you enjoyed watching along. But I wanted to express, too, my gratitude for everyone who watches and comments on a regular basis, and I'm especially grateful for those of you who have subscribed. It really is encouraging to me and helpful, and it does sort of spur me on and motivate me to continue making new content. So I do appreciate that very much, and thank you again for tuning in. I hope to see everyone again soon back here in the channel. Take care now. Bye-bye.